Make your marks.
You're listening to the Pool Boy Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the June edition of the Pool Boy Podcast. It's Steve here, joined as ever by Bob Ballard, Katie Wild. Hello you two, how are you doing?
Good, Steve, thank you.
Lockdown continues, maybe easing slightly, and prospects perhaps, Katie, people getting back into the pool. Obviously going to be very exciting for those people who've been stuck out of their training venues for a long time.
Yeah, I think any little nugget of normality would be nice at the moment. I think it will certainly be weird, and I think there is always that feeling of getting used to not doing it that can be quite hard to let go of. But I think these have been such strange circumstances that people will be itching to get back in.
Well, we'll perhaps talk a little bit more about that later in this podcast, because we're joined for this edition by James Goddard. Welcome, James.
Hi guys, thanks for having me on.
So we needed to delve into some of James's experiences and what have you from his swimming career. Now, 2 podcasts ago on our Olympics memories kind of journey with Sharon Davies, we touched on events in Athens 2004, and particularly with you, James, in the 200 metres backstroke final. Now, for those who didn't listen to that podcast, this was the event where James finished 4th, and then Aaron Pearsall, who'd won, was disqualified. Obviously, James went up to bronze, and then after a bit of toing and froing, was knocked back down again to 4th when Pearsall was reinstated. But James, how do you remember that final?
So, the lead up to Athens, I'll start there maybe. The lead up to Athens was that year, 2003 to 2004, was such a great, because I trained at Stockport, and I know you had Steve Parry on last time as well, talking about Athens and his bronze medal. So I was training with Steve Parry, Adrian Turner, Graham Smith. We were the 4 boys from Stockport that qualified for Athens, and we had such a good year training that year. It was absolutely amazing with Sean Kelly as the head coach, of course, and it was such a great year. And we were all swimming so great, bouncing off each other in training, really helping us get through some tough times. Swimming's a tough sport when it comes to training physically and mentally. So really helping each other get through those tough times, especially over winter for me. Over winter was a really, really tough time, and those boys helped me through. So, going into Athens, I felt great. I felt amazing. My training sets were going fantastic. My times in training, the way I felt. Because swimmers talk a lot about feel, don't they, in the water, like how they feel, how does the water feel? And sometimes you feel low, sometimes you feel like you're catching the water really low. I felt, and to this day, guys, out of every single swim I've ever done, the best I've ever felt in the water was in Athens, without a shadow of a doubt. It's still, even in my mind, thinking about all the swims, it's nowhere near the fastest I swam, but even in my head, it's the best I've ever felt in the water. And we had such a good lead up going into Athens. And I just remember, just a quick story real quick with the lead up. I remember I've spoke to Sean, my ex-coach, about his favourite time of coaching throughout his career, because I was with Sean pretty much throughout the whole of his coaching career as well. And we always talk about the 03-04 year. And I think if you spoke to Sean, he would probably say, I'm 90% sure that he would say that 03-04 was his favourite coaching season as well, with the team that he had. And and I said to him, why was it your favourite? And he said, I said to Sean, how did you know that we were going to swim well? And this was before Olympic trials, actually. We could maybe talk about that, maybe, if you want. But Olympic trials for Stockport was amazing. And I remember him saying, Sean, he told me this thing where he was sat down coaching us at Stockport. And I think he said it was a Thursday morning. And he sat there, and it was during the swim down where he knew we were going to swim fast. He knew we were going to have a great year and a great season. And he said he remembers sitting there with his arms crossed, and it was like he gave us like a 200 or 400 easy swim down at the end of the session. Usually coaches give you that for a little bit of garbage yardage, to like make it up to 6K or make it up to like 6.5K. So we're doing this. He says he remembers being sat there with his arms crossed, and he was watching me, Steve, and Adi doing this swim down. And he said he remembers down the last length of the 400 meters, we were just going nice and easy, nice and easy. And down the last 25 metres, he remembers looking across and seeing me, Adi and Steve starting to speed up, starting to get quicker and quicker. And down the last 10 metres, we were sprinting like it was an Olympic final into the wall, and like an Olympic finish, smashing it into the wall for who could finish the session first. on a swim down. And he remembers just sitting there with his hands behind his head. And he said that he didn't even have to really do anything. He could write the session on the board, sit back, and just watch us do it. Just watch me, Stephen Adey, bounce off each other, watch us compete against each other, test each other, push each other every single day. And so that's what I mean when I say it was a really, really great year that year. And going into Athens, I've never felt better. I felt so high on the water. It was just, in terms of how I felt, it was the best I've ever felt in the water.
James, can I ask you how it compared with Manchester? Because Manchester was a huge, great breakthrough for you, wasn't it? That gold medal at the Commonwealth Games. How do the two compare?
Yeah, I actually didn't feel great in Manchester. I remember doing the heats and I went like 2:01, and I felt so tired and sluggish in the water. I felt quite heavy in the water, and in between the heats and the finals, Sean had said to me, just try and relax down that first 100. And I think what had happened, because I was only 19, I was a spring chicken on the, and it was my first really big major competition in my hometown, and with the buzz and excitement of it all, I think I just got a little bit excited down the first 100. So what I did in the finals, I just tried to leave my legs alone a little bit, control that stroke rate, and I went out like maybe 0.1 or 0.2 slower than the heats. And I just completely relaxed my stroke, didn't overkick, and I only went like 0.1 or 0.2 slower. But that meant I could really bring it home down the back end, and I came back like a second and a half or 2 seconds faster down the back 100 metres of that, and ended up taking the gold. So that was the big difference, really.
So you obviously say you were having swimming the best that you'd felt.
Yeah.
Whatever you say now, but certainly up to that point, you knew that it was the best you'd felt. You qualified through the trials, went to Athens. Were you still feeling it there? I mean, it's a big step up from a Commonwealth Games or a World Championships to an Olympics in terms of atmosphere and things. How did you find that change?
I loved it. I loved it. I mean, and again, I've got to thank my teammates. I think with those boys that I was training with and the atmosphere that I trained with all year, because these guys have been to the Olympics before. Like, Steve and Graham Smith had won a bronze, obviously, in '96 in that 1500. So these boys have been, to some major competitions already, and they really helped push me through. But I was so young and confident, and we can maybe talk about my race, and I think that was my downfall in the end of why I came fourth. But I was so young. I was 21. I was confident. I was swimming so well, training with these big lads who were like 27, 28 years old. And I just going to the Olympics is what I always wanted to do. So when I did the heat swim, I felt I was literally taking the mick a little bit. Like, I remember coming down the back 50. I think I went 150. I can't remember what I went in the heats. Definitely 157 in the final. I might have gone 158 low or something. But I remember down the back
157.9.
57.9. Yeah. So I went. Because I went 157 3 times in a row. But I did that heats 157.9, and I literally down the back 50 meters was looking around. I remember looking from side to side, and I was like so far ahead of everybody. I was like down the back 50. I just kind of just relaxed and switched off and just made sure I won the heat.
That's where Chad got it from.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, because some swimmers talk about should you look around. Coaches say should you look around, and I don't know. There's a bit of a debate maybe whether you should look around or not. As long as you do it in the right way, I think it's fine. But and then I did the semi-finals, and I felt it, even better. I felt great, and I remember looking around again. And I think in Athens you only had to finish in the top 2 to make it through to the final. Was that right? Is that right in Athens? I'm sure that's what it was.
I think it was just the fastest 8 again.
Was it the fastest 8?
Yeah.
But I remember winning that semi-final. I was in the lead by maybe half a body length, and I felt if you win I was in the first semi-final, and Pearson was in the second one. But I knew if I won that heat, I was going to be in that semi-final. I was going to be in the final. So I remember looking around, touching well. I think I went 157.4 in that semi-final.
Oh, you're underselling yourself, James. 157.2.
Oh, was it 157.2?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I can't remember. Hey, listen, it was a dark time, but by the end of it, I sometimes try and switch out.
Memory plays tricks after 16 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But yeah, I'm underselling myself. But I remember doing that semi-final, swimming down, and I went to the toilet, right? And I needed, nature was calling. So I went to the toilet, and I'm sat on the toilet, and I could hear a couple of coaches come in, and they're American coaches, and they start talking. And they say, "Did you see that British lad in the 200 meters backstroke?" Because I was looking around, and honestly, I felt so high in the water. I was just looking around, and I was just cruising that back 50. And they were talking about me, saying, "Yeah, how good I looked and how easy I made it. I made that 157 look." And I was just on top of the world. And then obviously I had that day off. And then it came to the final time, which was a little bit of a different story.
How did you approach the final? I mean, you mentioned
totally wrong,
but I had this. I had a similar chat with Steve Parry, your teammate, as you mentioned, and he'd obviously had a slightly different journey through heats and semi-final to final, but he had a similarly dominant swimmer in Michael Phelps. He was racing. You had Aaron Pearsall, who was unbeaten since the previous Olympics. World record holder, and what have you, who was 2 seconds quicker than everyone else, I think, in the semi-finals. How do you approach that? Mentally, what was your kind of tactic?
Yeah, I did it completely wrong. I did it completely wrong, and to this day, I don't know. I was, like I say, I was so confident, and the heats and semi-final felt so easy. I approached the final. I don't know why, but I completely approached the final wrong. I remember going up to I did my warm up, and after my warm up, I went over to Sean and I said, "I'm going to win silver tonight. I'm going to go 156." And Sean was like, "Right, okay." And I don't remember exactly what Sean said after that, but he pretty much just agreed with me. And then when you're going up for your final, you need to be you just go up to go to the call room and go through all that stuff about 20 minutes before you race. And I remember about half an hour, I went up to Sean. I think most of us do this, but you go and talk to your coach before you go up for your race, just to have a chat about how we're going to swim the race and how we're going to feel, what we've done for training the previous year. And I remember going up to Sean and saying to him, I feel great. The heats and semi-final are so easy. I'm going to go 156, and I don't think I'm going to beat Pearsall, but I'm going to go 156 tonight. I'm going to break the Commonwealth record again, and I'm going to get the silver medal. And I don't remember Sean saying much about that. He was just like, "Yeah, okay, just go for it." And I shouldn't have done that, and it was such a massive error, because what I've done, and it was so stupid, is I'd already put myself. What I'd done is I already put myself on the podium. I'd already put myself in that silver medal position, and I put this time out of my head. And what I'd done is I'd completely forgot about the actual race and all the training sets I'd done that year on pacing, on stroke rate, on the pain of how it feels. We did a lot of back end speed work on the pain of how it feels down that back 50 meters. My butterfly kicks off the turn. How many fly kicks I'm going to do. And I just completely forgot about the whole race and switched off, and I just put myself on the podium. So obviously when I did my race, I thought I could try and stick with Pearsall for as long as I could. And at 150, I'm actually not too far behind him. And then obviously as the race goes, I blow up down the back 50 meters, and the Austrian lad and the Romanian lad go past me in the last 5 meters. And I go 157.7 or whatever it is. One of you guys have got the stats there.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah.
So that's the only one I remember out of all three. Right, brilliant. So, I dropped half a second, which is in my own mind. And I think I came back 31.0 on the back 50, which is absolutely, I can't swear on this, can I? Which is absolutely shocking. It was a second slower than my other races. And if I'd have just so what I should have done is just focused on my race, how I understood thought back to the heats and the semi-final, how I felt down that first 100 meters. But because I'm so competitive and I felt so good, and I maybe was a little bit naive, or very naive, I thought I could just stay with Pearsall, and I thought I could challenge him, which was the most stupid thing in the world to do, because like you said, he was already he's the world record holder. He's 2 seconds ahead of the rest of the field. And you know what? Being next to him in the final wasn't probably a good thing for me. Maybe being in lane 2, like Manchester, when I was in lane 2, maybe being in lane 2 might have been a better lane for me, actually, than being next to Pearsall.
I don't, James, like you say, you go through it and you say it's stupid, but like I hear the way that you're talking about it, and actually I think like sometimes going into a race with the kind of attitude that you were going in with is when like the magic, those magic races that something you always knew you were capable of but haven't yet put together. That's where it comes from. And also I think thinking about a race too much sometimes gives you an opportunity to talk yourself out of all the things that that you're capable of. So when you say like we've done all the work on the back end speed, we thought about the pain and all of that kind of stuff, that is also something that can make you you can think about pain too much and get scared of it almost. So I'm sure this is something that you have thought about for a long time, because it's so close and it's so near to something that you really deserved. But I don't like when I hear you talking about it. It makes me feel sad that you feel like you did it wrong. I just think that's an approach to a race, and it didn't work out on the day. But I don't think that sounds like it's a sort of terrible way to approach your first Olympic final. Was that your first Olympic final?
It was, yeah.
I think it sounds like a pretty positive way to approach something like that.
I've
Were you
heard this
nervous
before,
at all?
actually.
Yeah.
No, I don't remember. I wasn't. Yeah, of course, I was nervous, but it was like I couldn't wait to win the silver medal in my head. Do you know what I mean? And no, I hear what you're saying, and people have said this before. Like, at least you went for it. At least you went. You actually went and tried to challenge Pearsall, and actually, you thought you could go for it. And people have said that before. Like, you should hold your head up high, that you actually had the guts to go for it, and try and, I guess in effect, try and win gold. Because I'm so competitive that a small part of me, and I don't know, some of you guys might agree, some of you might not, a small part of me thinks that there shouldn't be silver and bronze medals at the Olympics, because you either win or you don't. And for me, my whole life was, I wanted to win. I wanted to be in first place. And if I wasn't in first place, I was actually a bit disappointed. So I don't know whether that was.
But you were aiming for silver, James. You just said you were aiming for silver. Then you thought you could get silver.
Yeah. I mean, of course. I mean, it's the Olympics, isn't it? I mean, being at the Olympics, like you take a medal. But when I got in the pool and I actually started the race, I tried to challenge. Just because I'm the racer that's in me and the competitive person that's in me, I just couldn't let Pearsall go. I had to try and stay with him for as long as I could, and I paid for it down the back 50.
Well, Steve did a similar things with Phelps, though, didn't he?
Yeah, I was going to say, was that before or after Steve's 200 fly medal?
The fly was earlier, I think.
Yeah, fly was earlier. Yeah. And you know what? Maybe
we can blame Steve.
Maybe, yeah. maybe that had a part to play in it as well. That I saw Steve do so well, and I thought, you know what? Yes, I can go for it as well. But I mean, listen, and for anyone that's listening, it's great to have that visualization of putting yourself on the podium and doing all that stuff, all that sort of stuff. But you've got to have that element of control in your race as well. You've got to have that element of, you can't just bomb it out. You can't just go willy nilly down the first 150 meters thinking that you're some sort of rocket man in the water. You've got to have that control. And I remember going down the first 100 meters and I was forcing it, and I was, to try and stay with her. So I was forcing the stroke a little bit. In the heats and the heats and semi-finals, I was so relaxed and just felt so smooth in the water. And then the final, I tried to force it, and you can't force it in swimming.
Was that a nerves thing, James? Did you feel nerves? Did you feel the occasion get to you, or what?
No, it wasn't nerves. It was just me trying to just go faster. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's just me trying to almost win the race and go that faster time, and I just forced it a little bit too much. And in any sport, if you try and force something or try too hard, it actually has the opposite effect. If you look at like the best sportsmen and women in the world, they look so relaxed when they're doing their thing, and when they win those races, they look so smooth and so. I always think about like a tennis player like Roger Federer. When he hits his tennis, it just looks so smooth and effortless. When Phelps is swimming his fly or Chad Leclerc, they glide across the water so smooth, and he can't force it. And I feel like I forced it a little bit too much, and that's what happens when you do something like that. You back 50 meters, you start to pay for it, and that's really what happened with me.
Which is why, in commentary terms, because I'd seen you for the last 2 years before that, pretty much nailing your last 50, the Commonwealth Games, the World Championships, etc. You've done your last 50. Always looked smooth, always looked composed. You came back very strongly. I kind of expected you to do it that night. I've got to admit, I thought, right, don't worry, he'll kick into gear, he'll do it in the last 50. And I was almost swimming that race with you, thinking, come on, James, you're in fourth gear, mate. There's another gear you can go to here. And it just didn't quite happen, did it? No, I know, and that was it. I mean, that was it. And it's interesting to talk about gears. Like I always a lot of the time, like I trained with some swimmers who didn't quite make it, and there was also my coach talked about it was easy speed. Like you can get really fast, good speed, and it feels relaxed and easy. And I think a lot of swimmers didn't really have that.
that easy speed, and that maybe that's one of the reasons why they didn't get to that next level. But I always felt like I had 5 gears and I had sport mode as well, so I could put myself into like 4th and 5th gear, but when I needed to, I could turn on sport mode and kind of get that little bit extra out of myself. And I just didn't have it down that back 50 in Athens, and I paid the price.
So you're coming down the last 50, James, and you presumably at some point in that last 25 realised that this wasn't going the way that you'd hoped in terms of how you felt and that kind of thing. Yeah. And you'd spoken about looking around in the heats and semi-finals to know where you were. Did you know where you were in that last 25? When the pain really kicked in?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Because I can't remember who was next to me. I think the Romanian lad was next to me, and I could see him just going past me in the last 5, and I knew I was in big trouble. And it's weird because I think I came 4th by 0.1 of a second, and it's weird because that's, in terms of like space and distance, it's nothing. It's like dirt on the wall. Do you know what I mean? But I knew, and I think swimmers know when they just lose or just win. When they just kind of come in a certain position like that. Yeah, I did. I kind of knew. I remember punching the pad after the race because I was so mad with myself. With blowing up in that last kind of 25, 30 meters. But yeah, I knew when it was, and even when I was swimming different strokes, even on breaststroke or fly, I could kind of see out the side of I always used to wear Swedish goggles, the Speedo Swedish version, and you can kind of see out the side, the kind of, plastic all the way around, so you can kind of see out the side. But I used to get those because I could see out the side of my goggles. And see where everybody else was, because I was a racer and I like to look around. Whereas we know Michael Phelps is very kind of closed, isn't he? He's got the speed sockets. You can't really see out the side of those speed sockets. And Phelps was very blinkered. I think Adam Peaty's like that as well. He's very blinkered in his swimming, that he doesn't care about anybody else who's around. It's kind of just him and the lane and the race, and that's it. It's like he could literally do it on his own. Whereas I'm not like that. I have to go. When I did my Delhi swim in the Commonwealth Games in 2010, it was interesting because I went so much faster. I went 1:55.5 in Delhi, and I think it's still a British record to this day, that 200 backstroke. And that's the best swim I've ever done in terms of putting the race together. That was the contrast with that one in Athens is totally different, because that was all about a race plan, hitting these times, knowing how I felt on each 50, a certain stroke rate, fly kicks under the water. I knew how many fly kicks I was going to do on every single turn, and I went 2 seconds faster there. But in Delhi, on the last turn, when you push off, and I did my butterfly leg kicks, and when I come up, you can see the scoreboard right then. It was at the turn end. And so I remember seeing the scoreboard. I remember seeing 125 on the scoreboard. So obviously 125 on the back 50. I've only got to go 30 points to go 155. I was like, and so that kind of gave me the inspiration down that back 50s. I remember gritting my teeth and just kicking and trying to hold that form down the back 50 and touching the wall going 155.5. So that was a big contrast with how I swim. I like to use that contrast of knowing my race plan, knowing how I'm going to feel, staying relaxed and down that first. So important to try and stay relaxed down that first 100 meters in a 200 meter race. And that was the big contrast between Athens and Delhi.
James, what was the sequence of events after you finished the race in Athens? Did you look up the scoreboard? How soon were you aware that Pearsall had been DQ'd?
So I remember getting out the pool and Sean running down and giving me a hug because Pearsall had been disqualified, and I was already disappointed, and I just remember thinking, and even now, like, if I'd have just swam the same time in the semi-final, in the final, I would have won silver, and I would have been looking at gold for half an hour, however long it was. But I remember Sean coming down and Sharon interviewing me. I can't remember exactly what Sharon said, but I just remember kind of maybe being a little bit, I can't remember exactly how I felt straight after. It was a real mixture of emotions. But I remember it got reinstated pretty quick because I didn't do a swim down.
It's about 20 minutes, I think, wasn't it, between the two?
Yeah, it was long.
I think about 20 minutes.
Yeah, because I don't remember doing a swim down at all. And I got I can't swear. I got drug tested as well, didn't I? It was, I think the medalists got chosen for drug testing, and then one random other person, and it just so happened that fourth got drug tested. I remember being sat in the drug testers crying, just sat there, just eyes filled with tears, and just devastation, really. I was just so devastated with myself and how I'd swam. And I had no, like, my mum sometimes says, oh, that bloody Erin Pearsall, like, But I don't blame Pearsall at all. Like, I've got no bad blood, or Pearsall was the best backstroker. He deserved the Olympic gold medal. I don't care that he kicked into the wall a little bit. It's irrelevant to me. Absolutely 100% irrelevant. He was the best backstroker in the world. If it had turned round at 25 metres and swam back and won the gold, then I might have had a bit more of an issue. But, a little kick into the wall, and he's two and a half seconds ahead of the rest of the field. You know what? He's the gold medalist, no problem. It was with me, and I was so upset with myself and so upset with how I'd swam that it was just pure devastation, and just felt like the world was... I remember I was sharing a room with Graham Smith at that Olympics. So in the village, you have the British team have like a block of apartments, and then each one has their own little kind of block. And I was in the room with Graham Smith, 2 beds, and I remember, because Graham's allowed to do his 1500, so obviously you've got to respect the other swimmers, haven't you? You've got to respect the other swimmers, and you've got to be quiet and go to bed at a good time. I remember sitting up in my bed, and it must have been maybe 10 o'clock at night, and Graham was just trying to get to sleep, and I had Gangs of New York on my laptop trying to watch that film. It was actually Graham's film, but he lent it to me because I couldn't sleep. And I just remember thinking, having the laptop on, this is not fair on Graham because the light's shining. He might be able to hear it through my headphones. So I turned my laptop off, got up, and I took the little shuttle bus to the canteen, to the food court. And as soon as you go through the doors, the food court in Athens, on the right-hand side was McDonald's, because McDonald's was in the Olympic, all free. McDonald's 100% free the whole time. So when the swimmers are finished, it's actually quite cool to go and get as many McDonald's as you want. But I remember going through McDonald's on the right-hand side, and I remember sitting at the table outside McDonald's and just put my head down and just slept outside McDonald's all night, and then woke up when it was kind of light, and then slowly trudged back to my apartment. And I don't think I slept the whole time, really. And it was just pure devastation, really. And it's really weird because I can't remember what conversations I had with people, because obviously people would be gutted and upset for me, especially Sean. It's just all really a massive blur.
Did you talk to Pearsall at all? Did he talk to you at any point?
Never spoke to Pearsall about it. 2011 World Champs, I saw Pearsall at a party in Shanghai, and we just had drinks. Me, him and Steve Parry just had some drinks, and we had a really good time. And actually, me and Pearsall for a long time were actually okay friends. Like, whenever we saw each other, we'd say hi. Because a lot of the time, the British swimmers and the American swimmers aren't seriously close unless they go to America and study over there. Because we only see them a couple of times every 4 years, don't we? World Champs, Olympics, and that's pretty much it. So you don't really get to mingle with the Americans. But me and Pearsall actually had an okay relationship. Because we've been in a few finals together, but we never spoke about it. We never spoke about that race at all. And to be fair, like it's only recently since I've finished swimming that I'm fine to open up about talking about. I will never watch that race back as well, guys. I've never watched it back. I will never ever watch that race back. I will never watch about it because I sometimes still, don't lose sleep. I sometimes still think about it and think, if I'd just done this different.
So when you do your talks, James, when you do your talks to the kids, when you go to the schools and stuff, do you not want to say, well, this is me at the Olympics? Do you not want to show them that you at the Olympics and maybe stop the race after 150 meters or something like that?
No, I can't. No, I'll wear my tracksuit and put pictures up and all that sort of stuff of me at the Olympics and stuff. But I can't watch that race again, Bob. I'll never watch that race back. It's just too emotional for me.
Do you just feel disappointed with that? Because I think for anyone who's not been at that level that you've been at, fourth at the Olympics is amazing. Like, it's amazing, and I know it has that more bitter than sweet feel for you. But you must there must be a bit of you that is proud, or maybe that is just too marred. But you must be proud of everything you've achieved when you look back on your swimming career. I hope you are.
Oh boy.
It's quite a big question, I know.
I know. I didn't know we were going to go this deep, but between me and you, I've been in therapy, and one of the things of me getting really upset is the therapist asked if I felt like I'd been a failure in my career, and I straight away said yeah. And I got really, really upset, and I've got a bit of a frog in my throat trying to say it now, but
Oh, sorry, James.
No, it's fine. I've not really spoke about it publicly, but I do feel like my career was a failure, and I know maybe I shouldn't feel that way, but I do. I didn't achieve what I wanted to achieve. And it does hurt inside, and I know I should feel proud, and I know so many people, families and friends said 4th at the Olympics. Like, you were the 4th fastest swimmer in the world. Well, technically I was the second. I think I was ranked second in the world after that Olympics, but I never say that. But they're like, wow, you're the 4th fastest swimmer in the world. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, that's unbelievable. That's amazing. And I just can't get out of my head how, like, for me, coming 4th is like the worst. It's the worst position. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes I feel like I'd rather have just not made the Olympics. I know that sounds terrible, but I sometimes feel like I'd rather just not make the Olympics than come 4th.
Yeah, and I think it's, with that, I know Steve's done a big podcast on retirement and the difficulties that people face with it, but I think this kind of feeling is something that it's huge for swimmers of all standards, in terms of stopping something when you feel that you could have done more, or you could have done better, or there's something that you wanted to achieve that you didn't. But I think particularly, when you're as good as you were, to come so close and not be able to say that you've done the thing that you trained so hard to do and you wanted to do. But just from a perspective of someone who was nowhere near as good as you, I mean, I look at your career and it's just incredible. And I know that's no consolation for not having done what you wanted to do, but if it's something that you can't be proud of, please know that there are a lot of other people who really admire you for what you did and think that your career was incredible. Yeah,
you know what, and I really appreciate that. And it's not like I'm not proud. Like, of course I'm proud. Like, when going to representing your country at a stage like the Olympics is, it's the most proud. It's the most proud thing to do as a swimmer. It's the most proud thing to do. And representing Stockport was, it's my home. It's my roots. I know I went to Loughborough for a couple of years, but Stockport's my home. Stockport's where all my roots are, and it's where I grew up. And my heart will always be with Stockport Metro. And I don't want them to feel like I'm not grateful, because I'm so grateful for everybody that helped me at Stockport. And it's you know what, I'm coming to terms with it a lot more since I've retired, and I'm obviously I'm able to talk about it a lot more. But it's maybe it's just me, maybe it's just my personality of how I am, and I don't think I'll ever fully get over coming 4th at the Olympics. Maybe I'm too harsh on myself sometimes, but I'm just kind of coming to terms with it over the last maybe 3 or 4 years.
I totally concur with what Katie said. I mean, I covered a lot of your races. I commentated a lot of your races. James, you gave me a lot of pleasure because they were great moments. Very good. Bearing in mind, you were such a terrible trainer in the winter. Sean always used to say to me, I can't get this boy to do the sets I want him to do in the winter because it's too cold. You just didn't like winter training, did you?
Yeah, and you know what? Like, and this is people that are going to be listening to this. Big shout out to all the swimmers who want to swim. The best I ever swam was in Delhi in 2010. And I've spoke to Sean. I get, now that I've finished swimming, I go and see Sean sometimes. We just kind of reminisce and talk about stuff. But to all the other swimmers out there, the reason why I swam so well in Delhi, people were getting sick. People were getting poorly, dehydrated, not swimming. In terms of actual swimming quality, I don't think Delhi was that great, but I'd never felt better. I won the gold in the 200 200 back, I smashed it. I hit my perfect race. I did. I broke the British and Commonwealth record at the time. And I've spoke to Sean about it and said, why did I swim so well in Delhi? And he said to me, that year, 2009, 2010, you'd never been more consistent in training, in terms of your attendance in training, in terms of putting quality sets together, in terms of working on my technique. I smashed my technique that season. Like we did filming, we worked on catch and the end of the stroke and backstroke, body positioning. We worked on so much that year, and consistently through the year, I did great week after great week after great week after great week. And I know it sounds kind of obvious, but the more consistent you are in training, the faster you're going to be, the better you're going to be. And I know it sounds obvious, but that was the reason for why I swam so well in Delhi. But I really struggled. I swam well in training. I did some fantastic training sets, and actually most of my memory is from training camps in South Africa, Australia. Doing great sets with Steve Parry. I remember going to Millfield, but as a junior, and I did this 10-300 backstroke off 3:45 long course, which is 1:15 per 100, which is okay. And I made all 10-300s backstroke. So you remember these kinds of sets. So don't get me wrong. I put some fantastic training sets together, and to go to the Olympic Games
in the warm weather, though, James, you had to go away to do it, though, didn't you? You couldn't do it in Stockport during the winter. I really struggled with the cold and getting up, and I really struggled to get motivated during like the November, December, January months. I really, really struggled, and I found it really difficult. And without my teammates, I probably would have dropped out a couple of times for longer periods. And it was because Bob, I'm such a racer. Like all I wanted to do was race and compete, and whether it was any sport, and it didn't even have to be sport. I remember playing. We used to, at the end of training sessions, when the coach used to put the bit of paper at the end of the block, at the end of the lane with the session on. At the end of the session, we used to screw it up, and we used to go with the boys. We used to put our £1 in. So everyone would put £1 in, and whoever could throw it in the bin would win the pot. You know what I mean? So we'd do stuff like that all the time. Like I was always competing, always challenging the boys. Whether it was at poker or this throwing the paper game or any race in the last 25 meters in training, I was so competitive. So training for me, and sometimes during those winter months, it's 2 or 3 months before your next competition. I just couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I just wanted to race all the time, and I found it really difficult. I did find it really, really difficult in those winter months. But yeah, for sure.
Did you ever think about going to the US, James? Just from the racing perspective? It sounds like it might have kind of suited you in a way, like the NCAA kind of dual meet racing all the time.
Yeah, you know what? I look back and think, should I have gone? Because I got some nice offers actually. When I won the European Juniors in 2001, when I was 18, I got some nice offers from American universities, and I kind of thought about it. And someone said, "Why don't you go and because what they'll do is they'll fly you out to go and have a look around." And you can fly to a few different universities. And I should have done that really, but the thing was, I was 18 when I won the European Juniors, and I broke the British record in the 400 IM actually in Malta with a new European Junior record and all that sort of good stuff. And I started getting paid then because it was done on world rankings back then. It was how high you were ranked in the world. That's how much you started getting paid. So I think it put me in the top 10 in the world. I started getting money then. So I thought to myself, I'm 18, I'm living at home, I'm getting paid now. I'm at a great club at Stockport with some top swimmers there. I'm swimming well. I'm breaking British records now. Like, why move? Do you know what I mean? I thought to myself, like, why move? Like, why not just stay here? Graham Smith was at the club. This Olympic bronze medalist, and that was the reason for me not moving to America. Should I have done it later in my career? Maybe I should have done it, especially after Athens. Maybe that was not after. Yeah, after Athens, maybe I should have done it because I didn't. If you look back at my career after Athens, I did nothing for 2.5 years till Beijing, really. Well, maybe even 4 years. I did nothing. 05 I bombed in Canada. 06 I pulled out the Commonwealth Games, and bloody Gregor Tate won 2 golds in the 200 400 in the 200 back and 200 IM. If I'd have equaled my PB, I would have won 2 golds there. I would have beat Gregor no problem. Like it's but I didn't go, and it was all off the back of Athens. Maybe Katie, that would have been a really good point actually in my career after Athens too, because Steve retired, Graham Smith retired, Stephen Adey, Steve Parry and Adey Turner, they retired, so all the big boys left Stockport after that. So I became suddenly this 21-year-old became the senior swimmer at Stockport, and I think after the disappointment I wasn't ready for it, and maybe like you say, maybe a change would have been good for me.
It's easy to look back, and I also think from my experience of thinking about maybe going, it was all so unknown, and like I found the whole recruiting thing completely weird because it's not something that we have in the UK, and it felt a little bit like, it's a bit too good to be true, and it's so far away, and I've never swum in a yards pool, and there are a million reasons not to, just as there are a million reasons to go. But I think as well, like you were obviously in one of the best setups in the country.
Yeah.
You'd need something that's really, really pulling you to leave that kind of setup.
No, and you're right. And listen, I'm solar powered as well, for sure. Like, as soon as you get me outside, honestly, I think maybe it's my Seychelles roots, but I'm so solar powered. As soon as you get me outside in the sun, my like, if it's in a training camp or it's in a race, I up my game straight away. Like, I know I didn't do what I wanted to do in Athens, but Athens was outdoor. It was warm. Malta, when I won my 2 European Junior gold medals, outdoor, and it was red hot in Malta. It was so hot in July. It was July in Malta, outdoors. It was so hot. And when I went on training camps to South Africa, it was slightly altitude, but that was always outdoors as well, of course, because you want to get that tan, that feel of tan. But I'd always up my game outdoors, and maybe looking back, and Stockport, Manchester during the winter, it's just like, oh my days, it's cold and dark and miserable. It's not really for me. And maybe looking back, maybe I should have made a change.
Well, you say you did nothing, but you did have 2 more Olympics and a pretty successful career, as you've mentioned a couple of the highlights after that.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, like, the Olympics for me is always, in terms of my swimming, has actually always been a little bit of a disappointment. Like, I came 4th in Athens, 6th in Beijing, and 7th. I don't want this course to be too down in the dumps here. Like, I feel like I'm being a little bit too doom and gloom here. Like, I had some great times. Like, literally, I had some really, really great times in swimming. It was, some of my teammates were just, who I trained with. They're just, Steve Parry is probably my favourite person that I've ever trained with in terms of, he's like the life and soul of the party, Steve. He's bubbly, charismatic. He's got the gift of the back gab. He's a hard worker, Steve, as well. Like, he would train. But Steve was kind of like, because Steve had this American background, he kind of had this, like, let's go hard or go home kind of attitude. So he would bring that to the pool. And it was, so I've had some great times with the boys and training with Kerry Ann and Cassie. So many different personalities. When I went to Loughborough, I was in a squad with, for 2 years, I was in a squad with Ian Turner as head coach. But Dave Carey was in there, Ross Davenport, Mel Marshall was the only girl in the squad. So, having banter with Mel every day, was great. And it's, so I've had some fantastic teammates and training partners along the way where I've had such a great time and such a laugh. Going to one of my first South Africa trips in 03 and 04 was Steve Parry and Adi Turner, and those boys again, Simon Birch, Stephen Mellor. And just some of my highlights were like, I'd take my PlayStation and we'd play PGA Tiger Woods 2003, and we'd play Madden 03. We'd have some like all-day marathon sessions playing golf on the Xbox, on the PlayStation, and Madden. We just used to have such great banter and such great laugh. And, I do miss that quite a lot, actually. I do miss, again, to all swimmers out there, make the most of the time in your club and in your swimming career, because it goes so fast. And you'll always have those teammates for life, but just have a great time and have a lot of fun. And when you're in training, like, bounce off each other all the time, like, challenge each other. Like, when you're in training sessions, you've got to challenge each other in training and use your teammates to bounce off each other. Because that's what I did. That's what I was really, really great, actually. I didn't enjoy training a lot of the time when I didn't want to go, but I bounced off my teammates so well. And I myself would push them because I'm so competitive in training. I'd make them race me. And and sometimes I'd do, because I'm a backstroke at IM swimmer, I'd sometimes do the breaststroke sets with breaststrokers, and I'd be like, right, I'm doing breaststroke with you boys here today, and they wouldn't want me to win because I'm a backstroker technically, so that would help push those guys a little bit, and I'd sometimes do some freestyle sets with Dave Carey, and I'd try and stick with him for as long as I could. Dave was a really, really good freestyle swimmer, 200 and 400 freestyle swimmer, so staying with him and during some big sets was hard work. So just bounce off each other and challenge each other every single day in training. It really does make a massive difference to your confidence, to your ability, to fitness, to strength and power, and and that's what it's all about, guys. Like, confidence. Swimming and sport is such a confidence-based thing, and you've got to be able to do those good sets in training to give yourself that confidence. When you stood behind the blocks, you put the work, and you've got your teammates behind you, and you've got that ability to put a great swim together.
Well, we know that in the current climate and lockdown and what have you in the UK, James, that swimmers up and down the country haven't been able to do that. They've not had that chance to train with their teammates. The camaraderie's not been there. Obviously, training at home and doing circuits and yoga and whatever else clubs have been putting on for guys to stay fit, and running and cycling and all that other stuff isn't the same as swimming. I'm interested in your thoughts and in Katie's thoughts about the sort of return to the pool and what they might expect. I mean, it's Katie, I know you had a number of times coming back from injuries and what have you, but it's slightly different in that these guys would have been able to keep their fitness up and what have you. But James, you've talked about feel of the water, when we were earlier in this conversation, and what's your view on getting that back? I guess what advice or what tips or whatever would you give swimmers who have been out of the water for almost 3 months?
Yeah, for these top guys and girls, it won't take that long for them to get it back. When you're an elite swimmer and top swimmer, you know how your body works. You're going to be sore when you first go back, like we were talking about before the podcast started. You know that your shoulders are maybe going to be a bit sorer than normal. You're going to ache the next day a little bit more, and it does take a little bit of time to get that back. And you need that kind of patience for sure. To get that feel, to get that conditioning back, that strength in, because a lot of the time with swimming as well, because it's such a great all-round body sport, it's the little muscles that get strong when you swim as well. And when you don't do that, the little muscles can get sore, and that's when you can start to pick up injuries. So I wouldn't be surprised if people, might pick up a little strain in the shoulder, and the breaststrokers maybe in the knee, or butterfly swimmers maybe in the back a little bit. So my advice would be patient with it. Build up, don't just get straight back in and start bombing big sessions. It's going to take time to build back into it. But a lot of the top swimmers will know this, and we've got some great swimmers and great coaches, so they'll know all this sort of stuff. But I was kind of lucky in the fact that I'm naturally pretty slim, and I can get in good shape quick. So if I had a month out of the water, it'd only maybe take me a few weeks to get back in and just start getting back up to that kind of high level. So be patient with it. Take your time. Don't bomb it and go, get yourself seriously injured, because that would be the worst time now, wouldn't it? You just had 2 or 3 months out of the water, you get back in and then do your shoulder in, and then you need another, you need an operation, and then you need another 6 months out. Do you know what I mean? So build back into it slowly. That'd be my kind of advice.
And Katie, what about sort of the mental side of it? Because inevitably, swimmers are not going to be able to make the same repeat times. Their first races in whenever that may be in the future. They may struggle to hit PBs that were or times that are close to their PBs or whatever. Is it just about keeping perspective or understanding that you have missed that time in the water?
Yeah, I would have thought it's probably best to be compared to when you've had your end of season break and you come back. And my feeling then would be, I'd dive in, I would feel amazing for 25 meters and be like, I haven't lost any fitness at all. And then you turn and you're like, oh my God, my arms are going to fall off. And how am I meant to do this for 2 hours? That's so true. And you feel pretty awful for the first week. And then sort of without really realizing, you just don't feel awful, but it will come back in that way. But I think the mental side of this is really interesting, actually, because I think people will have had very different experiences of lockdown. People might have found other things that they enjoy, and find it quite hard to stop doing that. A lot of people, I'm sure, would have really, really missed swimming and be keen to get back to it. But also, it might be strange circumstances that swimming's restarting, and it probably won't quite feel like it did. You might not be able to all train together at first, or you might just find it mentally quite difficult. I think it's perfectly reasonable if some people are quite nervous about coming back to this kind of situation, because it's been something totally alien to all of us, and I think I think it's sort of quite a nerve-wracking, slightly scary situation at the moment. So it might just take a while to get back to normality, or a bit of time to adjust to what the new normality is. But I think if this has shown us anything, it is one of the things it's shown us is how important exercise is for everyone's mental health. I think it's the only thing that we have all been able to do throughout this in some way or another, and it's one of the only things that gives you a sense of a routine. So to the extent we can get that back in our lives more, I think it's really, really helpful. It just might take a little bit of work to feel comfortable with it.
James, what will it be like for the elite swimmers who are aiming for the Olympics this year? This was their main target after a 4-year cycle. Then to have everything back a year, some people were going, right, do I keep going for another year? I was going to retire after Tokyo, but do I keep going for another 12 months? Have I got my body attuned to do another 12 months? What's it going to be like for the elite athletes thinking about that?
Yeah. And I've thought about this, it's a good question because, like you said, they've got to put it back another year. And there's some of the swimmers that maybe at the twilight of the careers, it's, do I go another year now? Yeah. And and that's the effect that this has had, and some people don't realise the impact it's with some swimmers, and some swimmers as well that I've thought about. There's usually a couple of youngsters that really kind of step up and make that kind of immediate impact and would have got on the team this year, some youngsters. Whereas now we've got to go another year. Another group of youngsters could maybe come through this next year, maybe knock them off. So it's a really good question, and it's a lot of swimmers have got to make some big decisions. I think personally most will go one more year, and I think the attitude is what Katie just said, is you've got to look at it as the start of the season again. I think that's a really good way to look at it. It's the start of the season again, and we've just got to hit it in terms of the mental side of things, like it's the start. But it's a really good question. It's going to be really interesting to see. I mean, I guess only time will tell, but it's going to be really interesting to see who's going to make the Olympics next year now, and how they're going to cope with it. Because I'm a big fan of watching the juniors swim and watching up and coming young stars coming through, because I was quite a pretty good junior swimmer myself, and I remember going through the ranks, and my transition was really smooth from junior to senior. I've won the European Juniors, went straight into the Commonwealth Games and did really well. I love watching and seeing these juniors doing well and then jumping on to the team and making that transition. And we're going to miss it this year. And the Olympic year is obviously the one that we all want to watch. It's the biggest one. So it's going to be really interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen.
You talked about being a racer now. For most of the swimmers, pretty much all the swimmers are not going to have any racing to do this year, the whole calendar year. It's not like there's even going to be a thing at the back end of the year to look forward to. So having a whole year without being able to properly race is weird, isn't it?
I'm finding it hard to comprehend it, actually. If it was my... This is where you need. This is where I was really lucky. This is where you need your teammates. This is where you need a great team behind you. This is where when you go to training, you've got your teammates to bounce off each other, and your coach to help you through this, and your support staff and your family and friends. This is where you're going to need some big help. Because for me and how my mind worked, I couldn't have done it on my own. I'd have really, really struggled with this time. I'd have found it really, really difficult. But knowing that that was going to go back into the training environment with some great teammates where we bounced off each other every day. We'd have our bad days, obviously, but we'd bounce off each other most days. I think that's what you're going to need. A lot of the swimmers are going to need. You're going to need that good support. And don't just. And what you need to do is, I think, to be a great teammate is not just expect it from your teammates, but give it to your teammates as well. Give them that kind of encouragement and give them that kind of banter and that competition in training all the time, where you can help each other and push each other. It's a two-way street. So that would be my big advice: is to really enjoy it with your teammates and help each other get through this time, because I think it's important.
James, it's been fantastic hearing from you. I think we will start to draw this podcast to a close, but thank you very much for your honesty and for sharing your experiences with us. Been really great to hear. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We'll, draw this podcast to a close now. So thank you, Bob. Thank you, Katie, for your contributions as always.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
We'll be back hopefully in July with another podcast. But in the meantime, if you want to get in contact, you can go to poolboy.co.uk/contact, at poolboy on Twitter, poolboy UK on Facebook, and now, as of this month, I've joined 2010 Poolboy UK on Instagram as well. So until the next podcast, we'll say thank you to James again, and thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Poolboy Podcast. For more episodes, visit www.poolboy.co.uk/podcast.